I'm sitting outside the opera house in Ljubljana in the country of Slovenia, and there's some nice morning noise happening, which I always enjoy as people are waking up. It's fairly early here in Ljubljana, a city here in even September filled with tourists. But I just wanted to use a simple example of the difference between exherency and inherency. So you'll know the word inherent. You probably won't know the word exherent. I'm not sure if I made it up. We could Google it maybe and find it already exists, like most words. So let's play with exherency for the moment. When something is exherent, there is a quality of it that is very much present on the outside of things. It can be measured very easily, and in terms of, say, the world of artificial intelligence, it can probably be replicated and coded as soon as AI can get more physical than just being on a screen. But an example of exherency is my cup of tea. There it is brewing. I noticed that they seem to give you honey with your tea here. But as I sit here outside the opera house, oh, there's a little bird. There's another one. They seem to be very confident and friendly and just come and sit with you and sit on your table. There's a whole bunch of other ones now, look. And you might say, in terms of a cafe, there's nothing exherent about these birds. In fact, look, they're just sort of invading here. There's a whole bunch of them. Let's keep the camera on those. There is no exherent benefit to the running of a cafe and selling teas and coffees and croissants to birds. In fact, the birds might even be a threat, as they do in my home city of Brighton. They're certainly not these little ones, but bigger seagulls will attack you. So there's no exherent benefit. In terms of my cup of tea, it's definitely exherently beneficial to come and sit here and have a cup of tea. If I'm meeting people for a meeting, maybe I'm doing some writing and it's going to refresh me from the outside in. I'm going to drink it and taste it and go, oh, that's very nice. And certainly we might say there's a measure that if I'm going to record a few videos, my voice is going to get a bit tired, my throat, and so having a tea is going to wet my throat and enable me to not lose my voice. You can get the feeling of what exherency is. It's all the kind of outer factors. They are the most obvious. What are far less obvious, sometimes we're not even sure if we're not just making them up or imagining them, are the inherency factors, the things that are inherent in sitting here. So for example, you might just say it would be better if I sat in an office. It could be at some point, instead of having to make this entire cup of tea, I could just take a tablet, get all the benefits and the feelings of having tea, get a bit of a caffeine rush. And certainly it could be that if I had an AI implant, every time I drank the tea, that would switch on automatically and give me all the feelings of the benefit of having had the tea, saving loads and loads of products and reducing a whole supply chain to just one tablet. I'm not being silly. The point about inherency is it's far harder to pin down, and sometimes it's just a thing in itself internally, a good thing in itself. We often get a sense of inherency. We experience it, can sometimes experience it for its own sake. It doesn't need to be compared to an outer goal. And so I might just tell you I come here. I don't know why I come to this particular place. It has an inherent quality that's not the same as the one down there. That it feels inherently good for me. It could just be that coming for a cup of tea with no purpose whatsoever in terms of writing or recording videos just feels like an inherent thing. Now the exherents would say yes, but it's because it makes you feel motivated, it makes you feel happy. But beyond even that, we can just look at sitting somewhere with nowhere particular to go. Just feels right. And what you might find is that when you look in cultures for thousands of years back, people just sat alone or with each other, often with a drink, often because it got hot, or say your throat got dry and you would have a drink. But also whether your throat got dry or not, if you didn't need a drink, you might still just sit there. So these are slightly elusive qualities. We experience them. We will often defend them and say, no, don't shut all these cafes down because they just use up energy. And that it's just a good thing in itself. So what we've got is a very clear thing about exherency. Exherency is very easily measurable. You could say a place to sell tea to generate income, a place to have dry throat wetted while one does work and is productive. You could say exherency here is that it grows the local economy. It showcases the local honey here. Look, there we go. I mean, it's a honey country, so this becomes an advertising thing, so that's exherently good to have a cafe that can showcase products. But one could also say, if you took all of that away, is there still something left that would make me want to come and sit in this cafe? Now, those qualities, we have a sense they exist, we have a sense they are important, we often miss them when they're gone. Many people argue for them and will look back and say it's a shame there are no cafes in our village anymore. And you will notice, for example, in a small village, if the pub or the cafe or the shop closes down because it's no longer economic, it's not getting enough customers, that the community will take it over and even run it at a loss because it's a good thing to have in itself. So there we have the usual problem that if we only live on the surface and we only live with the things that we can measure, that's very convenient, for example, to codification, you end up with a world that is automated by things like artificial intelligence and automation. But in order to do so, it has to ignore, even suggest that it doesn't exist, or it has to design out the inherent factors. And so that's really the difference between inherent and exherent, and why I'm concerned that if we start to develop a certain version of things like computing and artificial intelligence, is that just because exherent things are more on the surface, we can measure them more and therefore we can codify them. We end up with simplified, dumbed-down versions of our lives simply because the inherent factors are inconvenient, even doubted, and certainly not easy at all to codify. So sitting here in this cafe, I'm here for its own sake. Actually, I'm recording a video, and I notice in me sometimes now that I'm always doing something. A friend of mine said, you're always up to something. I don't mean anything bad, but just sitting still for its own sake, even beyond, well, sitting still calms you down, but just having a sense of, I'm simply, to quote Ratty in the book Wind in the Willows, there's nothing quite so much fun as simply messing about in boats. And boats weren't designed for messing about. They were designed for getting you from A to B. They were designed for catching fish. They were designed for carrying freight. In some cases they were designed for living in. But beyond that is just, sometimes it's just a good thing in itself to drift down the river and simply mess about in boats. As we get more and more scientific and materialistic, and the world of particularly commerce starts to dominate and monopolise our lives with only exherently measurable factors, we start to design out and undermine and even ignore the inherency that is part of, I believe, the uniqueness, the diversity and the spirit of being alive.